Today's podcast is brought to you by Smart Deploy. IT tools to manage your computers faster, easier, better. Head on over to smartdeploy.com/FRD or stick around for a podcast.
Still didn't fix that screen thing, huh?
No, you got to bring up the source subjects.
Sorry, I didn't mean to pick at a scab there.
You can see there, it's in full screen mode, not full screening. I've unplugged the DisplayPort or whatever USB whatever thing, DisplayPort. Just, Paul, I angered the internet yesterday.
Okay. What did you do?
So, I have been struggling. I have tried to force myself for years to use OneNote.
Oh.
I can't do it. I can't. It's not for me.
So I use the Windows 10 version because it has a kind of a simpler looking UI. I think the ribbon just makes OneNote just feel terrible for starters. You know, it's a weird. I know it's a subjective thing, but yeah, OneNote is a typical Microsoft product. It really started out with a good intention, and it grew and grew and grew, and it's kind of big and complex. And like, I think a lot of people, and this includes myself. I mean, I don't know how many years, I'd have to go look, but call it 10 to 12 years of notes from Windows Weekly in there that I share with Mary Jo and Leo, and so it's kind of complicated to get by it. But the truth is, it's like Word. Like, I only use 8 features, And in note-taking, I want text, and sometimes I take a screenshot of a presentation that I'm getting virtually, and I want to paste it in there. And that's, simple formatting, bullets, and I don't even use headings. I don't really, it's just notes. It's raw. To me, notes are raw text.
Yes.
And I know everyone's needs are different. People love pulling in data from the web or from other apps and, linking it and doing whatever. But OneNote is, Microsoft can't say no to anybody. I mean, I always say this, it's like the product is a result of saying yes to every request. And
I would qualify that.
Okay.
I would qualify that it was saying yes to everything because Evernote was getting a lot of popularity and positive PR.
Yeah.
Microsoft's like, we got to build a competitor. So they built about 6 different versions of OneNote at one point, and then we're back to...
You notice, George, I don't think it's a big deal calling this out. I mean, we had a meeting recently where George uses Evernote, know, and it was interesting to see it on screen because it's a simpler looking UI. Mm-hmm. And naturally, I'm like, I really like things that are kind of, minimalist looking, get out of the way, et cetera, et cetera. And, Evernote has its issues too, and, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, I use OneNote not quite every day, but every week, certainly. And, yeah. And then, add to it the complexity. This is maybe not an issue for you not using it, but like I said, I share it with these other people, and there are always problems, syncing problems. You get the thing, like there are literal sync issues where someone has added something and there's 2 versions of a note, or someone can't get in on this day because it's a day that ends in Y and it's a Microsoft product, and that's how that stuff works. It's frustrating,
So my current solution, or what I use right now, it's not great, but it works, is File Explorer. Not even joking. So I use File Explorer in Word and just folder structures to do it all, and it's getting it works because it syncs over OneDrive for business, which it does sync pretty well, but it's
by the way, you're actually hitting on a very interesting point, because obviously before OneNote was a thing, I used Word to take notes, and I would I'd go back then, this is like the 2 million years ago, right? But you would go to a meeting, it could be at the Microsoft campus, it could be at a trade show, it could be at a conference or an event or whatever it was. Open up a new Word document, take notes as someone is speaking or whatever, save it as a file, put it in the file system, and then OneNote comes along and it's like, hey, you don't have to, there are no more files. You don't have to worry about files, even though I think back then actually there was a file, but whatever. But there were no documents, right? And these things will sync automatically and, blah, 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 whatever. Sounds great. But yeah, since then, cloud storage services have evolved and improved to the point where that sync stuff is seamless, and I know I've reviewed computers. I bring up a computer, and with 1 hour, all my data is synced down that I need, all my apps are installed, I'm good to go. And OneNote is kind of an outlier because it's another way to do that, for this one thing. Maybe I'm sure, I think Mary Jo probably uses Notepad to take notes, just like she uses it to write articles. I could do what you just described and just switch to Word, I guess. But, I guess the reason I still use it is because, well, what do you call it? Inertia. Sorry, lost that word there in my brain. But also the sharing thing, right? So these other people can bring this thing up in their own homes or wherever they are and access the same notes. It's a little, it's not like sharing a new document every week or whatever, which would be kind of tedious.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I'm sorry. This is a long story, but let me add something that no one has ever heard. I was contacted by the OneNote team. Could have been as long as 2 years ago, but let's say sometime between 0 and 2 years. And they said, hey, we wanted to get your thoughts on creating a simpler, kind of OneNote client, and what do you think that should or could look like? And we talked about it very briefly, and I never heard from them ever again. But what I described was that thing you see a lot in the Mac space, especially, or on the iOS, iPadOS space, which is kind of a markdown-based, simple, minimalist editor instead of the battleship throw every feature, including the kitchen sink thing that OneDrive has become. OneNote, sorry, has become, because again, that's what happens. It's not Microsoft being terrible. It's just
overkill.
Yeah, it's 20 years later almost, right? I don't remember exactly when it came out, but it's probably 15 to 20 years later, and it's just gotten really big.
So, a couple caveats before the comments fill up with people hating on me. One, I never use the pen. Like, if you're using pen and sketching, OneNote is by far superior. So everything I do is typed. The second part is that I don't really share anything with this. This is personal organization. So I agree with what Paul just said. Like, if you're sharing stuff and you need collaborative lists, OneNote's probably fine. But I'm talking about just organized project management, note-taking, drafts in a single viewpoint.
I just realized overkill. I actually do use OneNote every single day. I take it it's on my phone, and I take it to the gym because I have a notebook, I guess we'll call it, or a note or whatever, where I have the weight machines I use and the weights I use. So I actually I look at OneNote every day, literally. But that that could be a text file, it doesn't. And I would say, aside from my Windows Weekly stuff, because I keep, I have notes for other things that I very sporadically use, but I have a notebook for meeting notes that goes back X number of years, a long time. And, I divide them by year and then by meeting after that. And it's one place to go and look for that stuff. But the truth is, a lot of times, like, say I wanted to look something up, like today I'm researching some Pixel stuff, And actually, in this case, I don't have Pixel stuff in notes, but if I had some kind of relationship with Google and we were having briefings, I would, right? And that's where that stuff would be. But then in my file system would be all the other stuff about Pixel, the pixels I bought, the photos I took of them, the articles I wrote about them, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what happens with this stuff. Like, it actually does create a divide. And that's sort of what I meant earlier when you're touching on something I think that's actually kind of profound, because it creates a system where there are two ways to get at this data and two different places where the data is, and it's kind of stupid when you think about it.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So there's my OneNote.
I had no idea we were going to talk about this today, but
I like to keep you on your toes.
Just dove right into the empty swimming pool.
Well, if you don't want to be kept on your toes, check out this quick message from our sponsors over at Smart Deploy. Smart Deploy makes it easy to manage hundreds or thousands of endpoints on any version of Windows anywhere. It's faster and more reliable than Symantec Ghost, MDT, or Acronis Snap Deploy. Head on over to smartdeploy.com/FRD to get started with your free exclusive software worth over $570. Speaking of spending dollars, Microsoft officially gave us the dollar figures if you want to go to Windows 365. And you can spend a lot of money if you want.
Yeah, you can.
Real quick, real easy.
Like configuring a computer or a car. I mean, you could go to town.
Yeah, so it starts at $20, and people are going to be like, $20, not so bad. $20 a month for a virtual desktop, not so bad. If that's like the Intel Atom of the virtual desktops, if you want something decent, you're probably looking like $60 a month minimum.
But remember, this isn't really aimed at individuals.
Right.
Commercial customers are going to get volume discounts.
Yep.
and those will be the first companies to sign on anyway. So people see this. I almost feel like sometimes you price it like this just to scare off individuals, but I don't know. I will say that the two big things I've heard back from people, and I mean repeatedly, are it's interesting because individuals will look at this and be like, I don't get this. Why would I ever? Why would anyone need this? And it's like, well, if you're asking that question, you don't need it, so don't worry about it. It's not meant to replace anything else, right? It's another way. But the other one is like this, it's interesting. And this has the potential to make non-Windows devices more viable, right? As we kind of transition to a future where our need for legacy apps is declining, but there's always that one or two hyper important app that, your workplace in particular needs and requires of you and you to use. And so, it enables this situation where you already have a computer, and that's the world, right? Most people don't go to a workplace where they hand them a $3,000 computer and say, go to, so you come to a workplace with your own computer, and you really don't want to mix work and personal stuff on there. You don't want to worry about them remotely wiping your computer or blah, 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 whatever it is. And this is a way to have all that stuff up in the cloud, always in sync. Every time you come up, it's right where you left it. Separation of work and personal data and apps, and for the company, of course, it's good policy from a security standpoint. So I mean, if you don't like get any of that, that's fine, or you don't need it. Like, then it's not for you. It's okay. Like, just don't worry about it. I haven't tested it on the iPad or like a Chromebook or whatever, but I'm going to do that hopefully today, and I suspect the experience is going to be pretty damn good.
What I'll be super curious to see is if you take a Chromebook. Log into Windows 365, make it full screen, what we equivalent, I think, F12.
It's like using Windows, yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious how that experience is, because to your point, what you just said was making non-Windows PCs viable PCs effectively, is you could see a real interesting scenario, especially, say, in education, where you just hand out Chromebooks because they have that really nifty feature that Microsoft could never truly replicate called Power Wash. And so you give it to them. Here you go. Log in. You're getting Windows, but we've got nice, cheap, easily replaceable hardware that's effectively disposable. I mean, I know education doesn't have a huge budget, but they're kids. They're going to destroy these things. It might be an interesting solution.
Oh, no. Couldn't agree more. I mean, one of the really appealing things about this is, it eliminates the biggest problem with Windows. Well, one of the biggest problems, which is not the complexity of using it, which I guess you could kind of debate. I think most people get that. It's fine. But rather the complexity of keeping it up to date and secure. And that's just happening for you in the cloud. It's seamless. You couldn't even manually download updates if you wanted to. It's just not allowed. It's just Microsoft will handle this. And I think that is a big deal, not just for education, but obviously it's huge there. But in any business scenario, I mean, it's just it's getting very close to the thing that I think, which is what businesses really want, which is delivering the exact app that they need, whatever it is, or a handful of apps, and then access to the data, which is something that could kind of occur in a variety of ways. But I'd like to see a version of this where literally it's about app deployment, that if you're using it on a Windows computer, apps are just added to your start menu and you don't even think about it.
It's almost like a PWA sort of experience.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think someone's going to listen and say, well, they're saying the laptop and the traditional PC is going to. Absolutely not. But this is.
No, this is just another way.
It's just another way to give Microsoft more money per month, which is.
Yes. Well, yeah, of course. That's why the 365 name was used. It's, multiple SKUs, lots of money. Whatever. I think it's in pretty good shape. From what I can tell. I mean, I've just played with it a little bit, but yeah, I'll find out more today.
So you got logged in, set up, and then just kind of putzed around, I guess?
It's Windows. It's one of those anticlimactic kind of a deals, right? The process of getting your initial virtual, or I guess it's a virtual PC, but your remote PC, your cloud PC set up takes a long time. It's kind of interesting. Like I imagine up in the cloud, it's being, what's the term Microsoft always uses when they create a new VM? There's a word they use. It's kind of goofy. Like Scott Guthrie always says, spins up.
Oh, spins
up a new instance of Windows, whatever. That took a little while, but whatever. That's a one-time deal, and that's something that will typically happen on the back end by your IT administrator, en masse, right? And one day you'll just get an email and say, hey, by the way, here's the link. Go get it. I haven't tried it in a browser. I will do that, of course. I just tried it in the native client because that gives the best experience, and it provides some additional niceties on Windows and probably on the Mac. I haven't tried that yet either, actually. Which is the ability to access your local drives through the cloud PC, which is super smart for transferring data back and forth. You know, I bought the cheapest one because I don't want to pay for it. I just want to pay for like a month and be done with it. But it seems okay. I mean, I'm not going to play like Quake on it or anything, or I guess Crisis or Flight Simulator or something modern. But that's not what it's for, right? And I don't have any like super special secret apps that, you know, it can't run on some other system that I have to get this way or whatever. I can only just test it. But by the way, Windows 10 Enterprise, super clean start menu. There's no crap on this thing at all. That should help with the lower system resources that you're going to get in the cloud, especially in the base SKUs. You know, it's a smaller, lighter kind of a thing. I don't know, it seems pretty good.
Other headlines include, you'll see where I'm going with this.
Okay.
Intel exec accidentally leaks Thunderbolt 5. Surface planning to deploy Thunderbolt 3, because that's how they...
You should have put air quotes around the leaked.
Yeah.
Or whatever, or, you know, mistakenly leaked or whatever. But there's no way that wasn't purposeful, right? There's no way. Because Intel, you got to think, just thinking about Intel these days, right? Intel is in a position right now where they're in a holding pattern while they build up their capacity for more sophisticated chipsets in the future. And what they don't want to do is like what Microsoft doesn't want to do with Windows is lose share, right? Right now, it's all about maintaining until you have something that's truly competitive. So they're talking about their next 5 years of CPU evolutions or revolutions or whatever that's going to blow the world away. They're talking about how in 3 to 5 years, whatever the time frame was, Qualcomm and I think Amazon and others are going to license their fabrication technology. And now they're talking about some future version of Thunderbolt that's going to double the speeds. It's unbelievable. And everything I just described is not available today. You know, Intel right now is very much about the future because the today for Intel is not necessarily super competitive. You know, I think it might have been calculated is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Just like we calculated this outro. A flexible, I almost had it. Windows, I almost had it.
Oh, it's like LeBron James missing a free throw.
A flexible if you're looking for a flexible IT solution to take on the modern workplace, check out Smart Deploy. Head on over to smartdeploy.com/FRD, and we'll be back here right tomorrow, unless LeBron hits the free throw. That didn't make sense, but
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.